Today is February 7th, 2018. It's a Wednesday, and this afternoon got back from my corporate responsibility. Got to play some more. So, as you can tell, windshield frame's gone, just pulled out steering column, and saving all the brake lines. Because we completely reuse this, why bend up new ones? Mazda did a good job of making those, so went ahead and marked everything on the master cylinder so I know where they're supposed to go again, so we can pop that out and hopefully reuse that too. Spent a little time on the firewall and removed all the lines, the master cylinder for the brakes, master cylinder for the clutch, steering column, all the lines, and then came around to this side, pulled off everything in here along with a sound deadener so we can reuse that. So now I'm sitting in my comfy chair and measuring and dimensioning and see where we're going to cut next. So right now, kind of hard to see, but there's a seam here, a double seam actually. So I'm going to go ahead and cut along and just take the transmission tunnel out for now, and then separate. There's a double row of welds there, and then spend a little time down in here, cut on either side of this up to that seam, take that out, and then slowly take my time, drill out the spot welds for that beam. I don't think we'll use very much of the existing one because this one here slides into the front frame horn one, but we'll use part of it. But if I can find something that's 2.5 by 1.5, then I can slide in there and use that throughout the rest of the car. But right now, everything's still looking good. I don't see anything that's going to stop us from moving forward. I removed part of the transmission tunnel, the part that I'm not going to need, and then cut around the box sections, which of course are under here. And then I've gone around and stripped out the seam sealer so I could find exactly where the floor pan to the firewall kick panel, exactly where that seam is. And what I did is I start on one side and I find all the spot welds. So here's that seam. Here's where the floor pan goes into the rocker panel. And I drill a 1/8 inch hole approximately in the center of each one of those spot welds. Then I come through with a larger drill, whatever I've got that's sharp. Drill through it since I'm not going to be using this panel. Just drill through. Sometimes you can just drill through the one layer. And then use a chisel and separate them. Not very complex, just take some time. So in here is the section that I'll remove next, which is the part of the trans tunnel that we're not going to use. We're just going to use the part up here that's attached to the firewall. And the other little piece I've got to take care of is that's the seam. So I'll remove this piece. I might leave it in for a little bit, but we'll remove that piece, and then what I want to do is put in a piece of square tubing or rectangular tubing from here, locate it all the way forward, and then tie it into the floor pan all the way to the back, and hopefully use that for the lower control arm front mounts on the rear axle. Today is Thursday, February 8th, 2018, and we got the passenger side floor pan removed from the box section, kick panel, firewall, and the rocker panel. So now we just have this little piece here to remove from the transmission tunnel, and we can start working on what we're going to do on the lower A-pillar door hinge mount area. Well, there you go. That's all done. So we have the floor pan, the main part of the transmission tunnel, and the little box sections all exposed. So all the stuff we're not going to use for that part is gone. Now I think I'm going to put it up against the Pontiac. Maybe I should cut some more of those off. But see where we're at and see where we need to go next. Doing our first official mock-up and seeing that there is more to cut off. So what I'm looking at doing right now is taking the lower part of the windshield channel off and that part of the cowl. Taking this little bit of the A-pillar off, maybe down into here. And then as you can see, it's somewhat centered. The rocker for the Pontiac almost slides inside the rocker for the Miata. So I'm probably work that out, but I think if we maybe put a piece of bar stock in here, or not a bar stock, square tubing, rectangular tubing in here, lay it on the outside of that and do something similar here to tie this in. Might have to pull this section off. But we'll keep playing. The only way to learn is to keep cutting and piecing apart. And as you can tell, I got to cut up some of the original firewall and move that up also. Probably a section of the cowl for the Pontiac, and we'll use as much of this cowl area from the Miata as we can. So we came back after lunch and did some drilling, and actually came out pretty easy. It was easy to see the spot weld, so got the upper channel off that is used for the bottom side of the windshield, and then I cut it off here because I want to maintain the structure, at least for now. Kind of ties in the front. Can't see where I'm pointing. The front apron, I guess you would call it. There's a support here that ties back into the side and also up onto the A-frame. So I'm going to try to cut some of this off, make it a little easier to get up underneath the car, and then I might start trimming into that. In order to make the Miata fit, we have to do some trimming on here. So what I'm going to do is probably, we know we're not going to use up to here. So I'm going to try to take all this, what's left of the firewall off, and then that'll allow me to get some room and get back in there and start taking apart part of the front cowl. We'll see what happens. Made a little bit more progress. Removed the firewall and cut it back some. Kind of laid the piece that I took off from the Miata, that windshield channel. So this is approximately where it's going to lay. Probably front or back an inch, or side to side a quarter of an inch, but that's basically where it's going to lay. So what I'm going to try to do is just been using 25 inches from the floor pan up, and that does come to right about there. And that 25 inches comes off from floor pan to this surface here, so you can see how that's curved. So my concept is that if we can get this to come in there, we'll be able to weld the two back together and use the cowl and stuff from the Miata. So I'm going to clean up down here on the floor a little bit so I can wheel this back in and see how close we are. Well, it's getting closer and closer. So what I'm ultimately looking for is this corner here is going to end up very close to that corner there. And you can see down in here, this is pretty close. And what I was hoping for is the hood hinges here are getting lined up pretty close to this center line. As you can see, I've got some more stuff to take off, especially onto this side. So I'm going to go ahead and start marking things, but so far it looks so good. We'll keep cutting away. I was just reading the Flying Miata V8 conversion, and you have to do a bunch of modifications to the tunnel. So they actually have you remove this gusset on each side and remove the transmission tunnel part. So I'm going to look into that a little bit more and see if it's going to affect my strength. If not, we will start to cutting. It's after lunch on February 14th, 2018, and I had removed that bracket from the strengthener from the driver's side, and I test fitted after lunch, and I had a little bit of hitting on this side here. So since I know that's got to come off anyway, went ahead and removed that, drilled out all the spot welds, put a relief cut in it, and just bent this in just a little bit. So test number 14 probably. Decided to go back and just do a minimalist approach, just remove that support, because you know it's got to remove for the future anyway, so go ahead and take it out now. So that's sitting up there. And then I just put a couple of relief cuts in. So what I'm going to do is just bend in the sidewall here and bend this down just to give myself some clearance to make some more room. And then we'll figure out the whole final part of the transmission tunnel later. Because what I'd really like to do is get this welded together and then make the structural modifications that are required up front to clear, I think it's the valve covers and the cylinder heads and that. So it's the afternoon, actually about time to go home. I'm getting hungry. And I am now 4 inches away from making this meet up. But literally little pieces moving it back and forth, little pieces moving it back and forth. But this is what I was hoping to get to, because what I'd like to do is eventually scribe a line here all the way top to bottom and be able to fold the edge back and then weld that to here. So that'll give me outside strength. And then on the inside, of course, I'll weld probably a plate in there, but be doing some welding on the inside. But so far, so good. Just got a lot more to remove, but we're just taking little pieces off at a time and slowly getting it in there. Today is January 27th, 2018. Finally got back to the cars, so we did some traveling. So I have removed part of the A-pillar, which is basically the front part of the drill's door sill. Yeah, can't speak either. And part of the rocker. So I think this bottom head will probably come out here in a minute, but I'm just going to test it right now and see what to take off next. So it's the end of the 27th of February 2018. We are getting closer, so you can see the little bit more that I'll trim off here. We're about 4 inches too long on the wheelbase. So it is getting closer and closer. Probably have to take all this off, but we'll figure that out when we get there, just to narrow that in. But it's fitting pretty close. It's a little bit tighter on this side. I don't have it squared up yet, but it's pretty close. So we'll take some more off tomorrow morning. And take a nap and get some food. It'll be ready to go. It's March 3rd, 2018, and we're spending a little time on the car today, or the pieces of the cars. So I've been whittling away for a couple days, on and off. I'll get a couple hours a day to work on it because I got some other responsibilities. But we are within about 3.5 inches. So I think this is the point where I'm going to start bending stuff back so I can weld things together. So as you can see, I'm using the plumb bob reference again. The car is not perfectly level. The front end's not perfectly level and square, but that's not important at this moment because we're just trying to see where we're at. So the biggest thing that I've found is that right in here, about that line, there's a big box section, and that ties where the support is for the old Miata A-pillar to the door structure, and then underneath it ties to the rear of the frame rail. that ties to the subframe, and then the frame rail comes up and over. So I'm trying to maintain this structure. So what I plan on doing is making a box section on the inside, because as hopefully you can see, there's quite a difference here. And the fender's got to wrap all the way under. So the bottom, probably from about here down of that box section, will have to be removed. So what I'm going to do is make another box section inside to replace that strength and probably make it stronger. And then we can cut that out so we can get the fender to fit back in there. But what I'm looking at right now is getting some more of this cut out, but instead of removing material, actually start bending this material out. So I'll have some place to plug weld it into here, give us a little bit of strength, but most of my strength is going to come from tying this box into this box here. So it'll be a really big double box section, slightly offset from each other. So when I get there, I'll show you more. This is the inside on the passenger side A-pillar box. So this is what I'm calling the box. So this is the strength from the Pontiac for the A-pillar, the door mounts here, and everything else. The box section for the Miata starts right about here and goes forward, and you can kind of see it. I hope you can see it on the camera. From here, and then it kind of angles out and down to that bottom corner there. So as you can see, there's about a 2-inch gap right in here. So my plan is to get everything back to where it's supposed to be, mount the AC components that are supposed to be up here, and then after the rest of this is welded in, design a box that ties in the Pontiac rocker to what's left of the rocker for the Miata, and then tie that in. Basically you'll have a big box section that goes right in here. So it doesn't look like it's going to really restrict the floor pan of the Pontiac, because this is where it originally was. It's right here, so there'll be more length possibly, or it'll be about the same, but this section here will be filled back in to strengthen up the two cars as they come together. So we get closer to that, we'll show you where we're at. Today is November 7th, 2018, and what I've done was cut some slots in here and bend this edge out, because what I'm hoping to do is use that to bend back in and weld into the Pontiac's, I guess you'd call it a front door closeout, just to add some strength. And then this surface here nearly lines up with the A-pillar structure on the Pontiac, and then from about here back, of course, is that box section. So we'll get into more of that in a minute. So let's try to fit it up and see what happens. Today is March 10th, 2018. It's after lunch. So I've been working on this most of the morning. Only got time to get back to it, doing some other things. So the wheelbase is about an inch and a half long right now. So you can see where I've folded this part back. So right here the box starts. So the box goes about here and then tapers down as we go down. It actually gets bigger and moves towards the front. So this is working out pretty well. So what I have to do is the chassis is level. So the Pontiac portion is level. The Miata portion, as you can see there, maybe, maybe not, the front needs to come up about 1.5 degrees, which is quite a bit. So I'm going to try reshimming the front and bringing that back up. Today is March 13th, 2018. I decided not to give a whole bunch of little tiny updates of going from 6-inch wheelbase too long to 4-inch, because it just takes a lot of time. So we are finally within 1/8 of an inch, which I'm going to leave for now because I have to raise the front end up about probably a finger width, probably 3/8 of an inch, half an inch. That'll make the floor pans touch. So we have the wheelbase, which we were using the frontage of the rocker to the marks on the that we put on the Miata before we cut it apart. So that is now 25.5 inches. So I'm going to do a little cleanup. Actually supported on jack stand so I can get it perfectly level. It's within 3/10 of a degree both directions. Then I can start looking at, you might not be able to see it here, but where the original Miata front window part is, grafting that in, and also making filler panels for all this, how to make the windshield wipers work, whether we use the Pontiac ones, which I'm pretty sure is what we'll use, and how to make that all work, how to make it watertight. And the biggest one is we have to tie this structure into the A-pillar post that's back here. So I did not cut into that. I did cut into this, so the original doors, as you can see, this is where the door hinges were. So I took another panel out of that, so there is still the box structure in here, but it's three-sided right now. So I'm going to tie the lower piece in to the rockers once I get this all squared up and lined up and cleaned up, and we can actually find out where we can start welding it together. But that'll definitely be a couple weeks away because I want to just kind of take my time now that I've got it just about cut and fit correctly, and find out our next plan of attack. I am pretty happy how this worked out though, because it looks like we're probably going to still have 4 to 6 inches of ride height at the bottom of the rockers. Same thing with the front end. Again, we can adjust that with coilovers later if we need it. But looks like this is a good fit, besides of course up around the cowl area, but that's all that is cowl area. So we can fill that in. Give us a lot of air to take in for the HVAC system. And then you can also see right here, this is the drain, so we'll have to make sure we figure out how we can plumb that drain out so it doesn't eat up the bottom of the fenders over time, because this car will be a driver, and hopefully a daily driver, because that is how we've always built them, and that's how we're always going to build them. Hope you can see this, but this is, of course, the black is the Miata, and the maroon primer and the green is the Pontiac. So you can see how we've kind of just cut and fit to get all this stuff to fit in here. We know for the Pontiac that the 4L60E fits in there very nicely, so we'll just have to do a little massaging. You can see how much we've had to cut out of the transmission tunnel to make that fit. But I think it looks like everything is very, very close. I don't think there's going to be any problems with the floor pan, because I think that's going to end up pretty close to where it was on the Pontiac, not out a little farther. I did cut the mount off up here for the steering column mount, but I think we can adapt that into here and then use the stock hole for the Miata, or we can even move that over a little bit more. We still have the mounts for the master cylinder, and if he ever decides to do switch it over to a manual in the future, he still has the ability to do that with the clutch master cylinder. So all we're looking at now is how to tie all of that back together. So from the rockers, from the A-pillar from the Miata to the A-pillar of the Pontiac. And this is the back side of the glove box. So we'll probably trim up, of course, up in here, but I wanted to keep that mounting structure, because you can see it's very, very close to the Miata mounting structure. So that'll keep the glove box and the dash strength there. And as you can see, I'll go around to the other side where we can tie in those two panels. Now they are offset probably an inch, inch and a half, but I think we can make those two mate up very well. And I'll explain the bottom end. I'll try to stay out of my light here. But this is the passenger side. And like I said, that'll wrap around. We do some up in here to attach the Miata to the Pontiac. But when we get down in here, there's a good 3-inch gap. So what I want to do is build a box section somewhere in here down to tie this together. So in a sense, that's where the original rocker or A-pillar was, is this surface here. This is really not going to restrict any of the footroom. But what we'll do first, of course, is put all the HVAC system in, the boxes, the blower and that, so that we don't interfere with that and we make it easy to pull that out for service. This is where we're at today, end of March 13th, 2018. You can see where I've cut all this back. That was closed off from here. It wrapped across, was spot welded into here, and then this panel was wrapped over, and you can see where the door hinges were. So that was the final bit that we needed. Again, we're within about 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to start cleaning things up, putting things together, and hopefully the next one we'll start showing how we're going to piece these two together so that we have a strong car that's going to last a lifetime.